Starting. Hello, everybody, and welcome to Lone Star Legacy, the official podcast of the Lone Star Goyfs. My name is Sam Craven, and I'm joined by three other dudes who will introduce themselves now.
Hey, I'm Stu. I've been on the cast before. Per tradition, I'm drinking a St. Arnold's pub crawl. And other than that, I'll let Ashby or Patrick take it away.
I'm Ashby, first time on the podcast and the stream. Been playing Magic for quite a while. Well, actually, probably not quite a while compared to a lot of these other guys. And most of the Legacy players started in Lorwyn block, but been pretty strong since then.
Lorwyn was what, like 2008?
I think so.
Something
like right, yeah. I just barely missed Future Sight. So.
All right, yeah. Yeah, I wasn't playing during that period, so I'm a little hazy on the timeline.
Yeah, I'll pass it over to Patrick.
Yeah, I'm Patrick. I'm drinking a 6-point low res tonight. It is my first time on the cast, and excited to talk about some Eternal Magic, some vintage, and a little bit of how we got the Lone Star logo started, right?
Yep.
Real quick, I forgot. I'm drinking rum and soda because I'm on a diet and I can't have beer. It's awful.
Well, what kind of soda?
It's almost as sad as the Tale of Darth Plagueis the Wise. Soda, like club soda. In fact, it's actually HEB brand club soda.
All right.
Oh, nice.
I was thinking rum and Coke. I was like, dude, that's not going to work for you.
Yeah, so like Patrick said, I think tonight we wanted to talk about, to some extent, it's the background of our team, but more specifically, how the Houston chapter of our team got a vintage community up and going. Sam, Patrick, and Ashby are all in Houston and play the format probably. You guys probably all play it every other week, right?
Yeah, I would say so.
Yep. We've been a little on and off during the summer just because of people traveling and other events going on. But other than, about a 6 to 8 week period in the summer, we've been every other week. And Chad and I actually play at work now.
Awesome. Little lunch break magic.
Yeah, my boss walked in, just looked down and goes, "What the fuck is that shit?" Let you have a way with words, sir.
Yeah.
I'm based in Austin, where we don't have quite as robust of a vintage scene. So I think tonight I'll mostly just be moderating this discussion and also hopefully taking some useful points away if I'm interested in trying to build out a vintage scene here.
On that note, we have tentatively scheduled that as per our normal every other week schedule, we will be the weekend of, I think it's the 20th of September. That tournament will be held in Austin. And it's not the 20th. It looks like it's either the 17th or the 24th. I can't remember. We were all kind of drunk when we discussed it, but that's the plan.
All right. Also on that note, the last weekend of August, which is something like the 25th maybe, there's vintage in Austin, but it's the same weekend that you guys are doing vintage. And I was actually planning on coming up to Houston for that, so I guess I'm going to be missing it. But anyway, so to kind of get the ball rolling, I think we wanted to kind of talk about how you guys got this all started. My memory is sometime in the last year or two, there was a group of guys who was interested in playing both old school and vintage at the game store Asgard Games, and they kind of got it rolling from there. So maybe one of you wants to talk about how that got off the ground.
I don't really remember starting as much as already being started. It was Ben, who has been on the cast several times, Stu, and then Patrick Vincent, who has not been on the cast or in any of our public coverage, actually, had talked about kind of forming a team just starting out. It was just kind of going to events. And then, we wanted to play some other stuff, and we started arranging these events. And I started working at the game store, and that made it really easy to just go up to the manager and be, "Hey, can I run vintage on Sunday?" I don't remember how we came to decide that. I know one of the discussions in here will be proxies, is that we have at Asgard attempted to start vintage this is at least the third time, and the previous times had proxy limits. And one of my big things on starting this time was no proxy limit, because that just cuts people out. I mean, go look at a workshop deck. If you play that deck with 25 proxies, you're probably still out $300 or $400.
Yeah, for sure.
If not more, now that Chalice is spiked.
Yeah, it's nuts.
Yeah. So I remember this being probably last fall when that got started. Do you, or at least the first time you guys tried doing Vintage at Asgard?
Well, we started, I believe, 1 year will be September for Vintage. In terms of calling ourselves a team and all that, I think that was right when Eternal Weekend was, which I believe was also September of last year.
Yeah. It was somewhere around there, right?
It was. I know it was during college football season, so it would have been September at the earliest.
I think that's about right. We went through a little bit of some different naming iterations in trying to come up with the team. I remember a lot of it stemmed from Eternal Weekend, where just a whole bunch of us ended up being on the live stream, and just kind of having beers afterwards. Like, we got to get some T-shirts or something, like represent a little bit with having everyone on there. And so I think from there, was it Patrick Vincent was in the booth after one of his matches, and what he gave a shout out to
it was
one of our early faux pas of a name. Was it the Eldrazi Lords?
Yeah, it was so bad. No one wanted that name, but he just had to make it official. So.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So as official as that was, it's not. We kind of went through some iterations and ended up landing on, I think, Lone Star Lurgos was that you, Stu? Kind of coming up with that name?
Yeah. Sam was a big booster for the idea of having alliteration in our name.
I love alliteration. I was also the person doing the work on the T-shirts, which gave me veto power.
Yep. But
can't beat that, right?
Yeah, I think we were all looking up tribal names that rhymed, that had a T in it, for like Texas, and then.
Well, I know we started with a bunch of Houston, and you and Patrick were both like, guys, like, we're in this too, and.
Yep.
I think we Houston Homerids was the one I really wanted. Is that possibly the worst crime in all of Magic?
It's pretty bad.
Yeah.
That's really terrible.
Yeah. But yeah, so it kind of went from, that Eternal Weekend, getting a name together and just kind of, Sam mentioned building these T-shirts and stuff, and we kind of just offered it up for people at the store, and it kept growing, and we got a little group together. And along with that, we kept firing our Sunday vintages, and I think that's the thing that's been pretty powerful about this is bringing a lot of people in who might not necessarily be interested about vintage, and kind of how we really started to build our own community, which I think has been the powerful thing about it, and will continue to be the thing that keeps it going.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and that's I will say, like you said, it started with a couple guys at the store, and it's kind of expanded from there. There's almost like 3 tiers of goyfs. There's the guys like us who are really heavily involved. Like, I know, Patrick, I'm sure you spent countless hours setting up the Invitational, as I did. And then the guys who are trying to help run vintage and stuff like that. Then there's a lot of guys who are just regulars, but that's fine. There's nothing wrong with not putting work into it. And then there's like a third tier that's kind of just guys who like being part of a group. They like having guys to hang out with at the tournament, and that ranges from some guys who don't play a lot, but they think it's cool that we've all got a group, to we've got people who are not in Texas who ordered Lord Goyf shirts on our last order just because they're cool guys, and they like hanging out with us. And we like hanging out with them. I hope I can speak for all of us on that.
Yeah, absolutely.
Probably also comes down to who just actually reads the group chat. It's a lot to keep up on.
Yeah, it really is.
So that was kind of the origins of how this whole group got started, and it's both a mixture of vintage and legacy, with the legacy portion of being sanctioned. But you guys were firing bi-weekly vintage. Who's like celebrating them?
Oh, that might be. Yeah, it's probably people watching football at my apartment.
Texans preseason game is on.
Yeah, it's kind of a big deal over here.
Yeah, so. not nerdy people. Yeah, so you guys started firing bi-weekly vintage at Asgard Games, and at a certain point, you wound up migrating away from the store and into a different location. Someone was familiar with the brewing company Brash in Houston, and at some point, you guys started doing vintage there instead. How did that happen?
So we started, as I said, I worked at the game store. And we kind of got to the point a couple of us were getting a little disgruntled. We were not gruntled. And it was a number of things. They have a bar at the store, which is great, but they weren't ordering the kind of beer we liked. But the big thing for me was I was running the event, and like I would take a sign up. Then people would be like, hey, can we start this tournament? We'd be like, well, I was behind the counter taking a sign up, and then someone came up to check out, and now I have to check them out. And between that and then, like, we could only pay out store credit. And if you're playing proxy vintage, store credit's not super valuable. And we had all been kind of annoyed for a while. And Patrick was like, let's just go to Brash. Brash is awesome. And I was just like, cool, that's what we're doing.
Yeah, I think, it may have been beer driven and driven towards beer, but I think it ended up working out really well. And I think it's the place we'll keep going back to. But, this idea of, let's take it out of the shop, make it a little bit more our own. That way Sam could run it the way he wanted to, when he wanted to. We could fire on time and not have other constraints. Someone did well in Jackson.
Yeah.
Actually, you need to get some push-to-talk action going there.
But,
yeah.
But going to Brash, like, it's added so much to it in many ways. It's kind of taken it back to a little bit of that kitchen table feel, or... I think what it's probably like in Europe playing in a pub. You got a bunch of people sitting around an old warehouse on picnic tables with beer glasses everywhere, play mats, and you're drinking great beer, and we're playing vintage, and I think we're all really excited about it, having a lot of fun, and it's very casual, it's very friendly. I hope for new people coming in. And I think we have a great time, and it's kind of open to all. And we keep growing, which has been great. We keep getting new people coming in, trying it out. A lot of them have stuck on with it, and some people, they might come once or twice and come and go. But every time, I don't think anyone's super disappointed, which I think is a great thing. And Sam runs a great little event for us. And
so to rewind a little bit, there's a couple things I really like about Brash before we get too much into the community part. And like one thing is there is the kitchen table, but being in a bar is slightly different. A bar like setting is we have people walk by and go, is that magic? And it's great to, yes, please let me tell you about this thing that I love. And I don't think we've pulled any new people in yet. I have a guy that Ashby and I met while extremely intoxicated, who I'm going to text tomorrow. But it's cool to have these people who are like, oh, I remember Mox Sapphire. There was only one of those in my play group or something like that. Man, I always wanted one. We go, hey, 100% proxy, come anytime, play the shittiest deck you want, play whatever you want. A guy I work with played Channel Karavix Torch because he didn't know Banefire existed. He wanted to play Channel, so that's what he came and he did. And another, this kind of little, but Houston is fucking huge. I think a lot of people don't understand how spread out Houston is. If I were to leave my apartment and drive south, land would end before suburbs. And so there's a lot of people who are coming a long way to these tournaments, and having a place that isn't just a game store is really helpful in getting those people to come out. For example, we have a friend of ours he's not in our group, but he's been a friend of mine for several years playing Magic. Moved out to the Woodlands, probably 35, 40 minutes in no traffic. And it's rough for him to come out, but he brings his wife, and his wife likes beer, and she likes the neighborhood. And it's a thing that makes it just that much easier to come, is that it's a place you want to go. It's not like, we've had events where out-of-towners come in, and they come into the store, they play 4 or 5 rounds, and they drive 3 hours home. And that's no fun for anyone. Right. Especially if you lost.
If Magic's not going well.
That would get pretty terrible just to drive multiple hours just to play an event and lose all 4 rounds. That's just a quiet drive home.
Yeah.
Every Star City event I've ever been to in Dallas. I went 0-1 drop at the last Star City event I went to.
It's been like forever since I've been to a Star City event. Just since they stopped doing Legacy Classics, more or less, I haven't had much incentive to go to one. But a quick other point on that, Patrick mentioned also the idea of like this whole pub atmosphere, and I don't know if any of you guys listen to the old school podcast, Flippin' Orbs. It's like fairly new. But,
I just heard of it. I've been meaning to check it out. I haven't yet, though.
Yeah, it's cool. I like it partially because I lived in Chicago for a couple of years, and one of the guys on it lives in Chicago. But yeah, something they talk about is how they run a lot of their events at breweries and brew pubs and stuff, and they like do their events for charity basically instead of like even giving out winnings. But I think that's
a lot of times the old school guys, they're giving out prizes that are sometimes it's just donated, basically.
Yeah.
I mean, I've seen a lot of, top 4, everyone gets a revised Swords to Plowshares, and everyone has to sign it.
Yeah.
That's exactly a cool prize. And we can get into our prizes. I do want to rewind. There are 2 other things I wanted to mention before we get too far afield from Brash's. One other thing that's been really cool is Brash has been awesome to us. So I always encourage people to drink their beer because they've been really good to us. Like this kind of goes on with the cool stuff that goes around. We showed up one Sunday and they were having a car show. And the guy that always helps us out said, hey, we set aside these 2 tables over here. Like, those are yours. I know you're going to have to be a little tight, but we set those aside for you. And then he came up like 5 minutes later, was like, by the way, if you need another table, we can go get one for you. And that's, and I mean, they're doing that because we come in there, we clean up after ourselves, we tip well, and we're cool dudes. They also give us a crowler for those who aren't into craft beer. That's basically a can about this size filled up off the tap. They give that to first place for free, which is great. And then the one other thing I wanted to going slightly further back, Patrick said, let's go to Brash. And I said, all right, that's what we're doing. And my central thesis to everyone who has asked me, how do you start a vintage community, is just do it. Don't ask people, hey, are you interested in vintage? It's just, we're playing vintage at Brash on Sunday at 1:00. Here's the info. Come. I don't, and I'm sure you've seen this in the group me. I don't ever ask anyone anything. I say, this is what we're doing. Or I'll say, hey, I'm going to the bar at the corner. If anyone wants to join, come. But I'm going whether you come or not.
And as what is maybe a final point on Brash, if we haven't clarified this already, Brash is themed around metal. So they have like what are some of their beer names? Like, isn't Ale Satan one?
Ale Satan is on their logo and also Patrick's shirt. Patrick, you can talk, so you show up.
Yeah. So Ale Satan is Brash. No, they are. What is it? I think it's. I forget what their exact motto is, but it's hobby beer.
666th most metal brewery in Houston.
Yeah, and it's something like we make hoppy beers and stouts, and if you like something different, you can go back to your mother's teat. So yeah,
and their jukebox is like 45 metal albums and 5 like 90s rap albums, like early 90s.
And regardless on your opinion about metal, there is, when you go back to like 90s Magic, there is like a connection to metal culture to a certain extent. They all have this sort of like shared lineage with things like D&D.
Yeah,
and,
for sure.
I think
Definitely.
to some extent that makes this whole thing more fitting.
yeah.
They also have, if you're another thing that draws people out, one of the guys who works there collects old arcade games and fixes them up. And they have rows and rows of arcade games that are occasionally free, but I mean, I have a job. I don't mind sticking $1 into Cruisin' USA.
Come on, Area 51.
So that's kind of how you guys got set up there. At this point, you probably have, on a given event, you probably have somewhere between 8 and 14 people showing up. Would you say?
That's right. Yeah,
Definitely.
From September of last year through the beginning of summer, we had never failed to have 8 people.
Mm-hmm.
It's only 2 or 3. The one thing that's great is there's only 2 or 3 people who make all of them, but our community is now 16 or 20 fairly regular players, so we almost always do make 8.
And a statistic that Sam also likes to tout is that, at least for a long period, we had basically a new person show up every week.
That's not the stat I usually say. It's more the one I like to go with is we have never had someone show up for their first vintage and not win at least one match.
Oh, that's a good one then.
And that includes my coworker who showed up with Channel Lich's Mirror. He almost went 2-2. He messed up some math, and that was why he lost to not go 2-2.
So I think, and maybe I have this wrong, Ashby, at one point, I believe you were one of those like newer faces showing up. Is that correct?
Absolutely. I decided to come out. Like, I'd seen them playing at Asgard beforehand, playing on Sundays, and hadn't really just decided to put a deck together and come and play. And then Sam told me they were doing it at Brash, and I'd never been to the brewery, and decided, you know what, this is a good opportunity just to go play some vintage and drink some beer I've never actually heard of. So I went out there, and I think I piloted. So I was a bit worried about like not knowing much about the meta itself of vintage and knowing like what needs to be played, how interactions are. So I kind of went with a safe deck of playing Merfolk as well with just powered Merfolk.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, was able to end up getting a couple wins that first time, and I've basically been trying to. Yes, I did. I think I finished third.
Nice. There you go.
So yeah, it was for first time playing vintage, especially against decks like Shops and Oath, where I had never seen interactions like that at all. And I was pretty happy with it, and I've been trying to make it to every single one since.
One thing that's great is like our connection, like how Ashby has joined us is kind of really far out. Is when Asgard started, it was founded by my best friend Will, and Ashby was a customer, and so was his friend Chad, and they're now roommates, and I work with Chad. And we all live really close together. And so like one of the little community things is every Sunday with Vintage, it's like the three of us in a group chat, and at least two of us are hungover, and the other one is like, all drive, guys.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's interesting. I could see it potentially being sort of intimidating to show up at one of these events for the first time because, both you're going to be interacting in a form of Magic that's maybe different from what you're used to. Like you said, the decks are doing something you might not have ever seen before. And also you're not doing it on this sort of neutral ground of a game store that everyone's maybe used to going to.
Yeah.
But it seems like you showed up and were kind of immediately comfortable just playing the format and doing it at this location.
I think it helps that I play a lot of other formats as well. And I think that just being very comfortable with playing Magic in general, I think helped. I could see how players who haven't played in a very long time might feel uncomfortable at first, that they're worried, what am I about to step into? Like, I remember decks being broken when I'm sure they're thinking, I remember decks being broken when I played, and now they're probably thinking, what are the decks like now? I have no idea what to expect.
It's the great fallacy of Vintage is someone says it's full of turn one kills, but it's also full of turn one answers, which makes it not full of turn one kills.
Absolutely.
I'll say there's got to be at least a little bit to be said that I would guess if you polled the people at Brash, 65 to 75% would say, what's your first Brash beer you should try? Pussy Wagon, which is, 6.7%. So everyone's feeling a little warm and fuzzy by the time round 3 starts. It's a lot easier to make friends when everyone's got a solid buzz going at 3 in the afternoon.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
And, sorry, go ahead, Patrick.
Well, I think like a couple of things that Ashby said. One, him kind of seeing us play at the store, I think is one of the things that we've tried to do quite a bit to try to foster the community. And I'm sure Sam will want to talk more about this. But so we would, Thursdays is when we usually fire, or Thursdays and Saturdays is when we have Legacy. And a lot of the Legacy community is part of the Vintage community as well. And we always have Vintage decks on us, especially because they're proxy. So it's very easy to just do pickup games before, in between rounds. And we get a lot of people kind of saying like, oh, like, what are you playing? You're obviously not playing, it's not Black Lotus in a Legacy deck. So what's going on? And what's awesome about that is you can just take the deck, hand it to them, and be like, yeah, and the other thing that's really powerful about that is you can actually say, like, we're going to do this on Sunday. They get to meet some of us and see that, we're not going to, out there to stomp on their faces or anything, but like we're just drinking a beer and having fun.
Yeah, I used to love first FNM of the new set, playing Vintage. This is before we ever had a Vintage community going. Playing Vintage, and I'll tell you, like, FNM kicks off at 6. It's the first one. It's going to be busy. It's going to be late. It's going to kick off at 6:30. Show up at like 5, play some Vintage, and half the people there are going, "Whoa, what's going on over there?" And I'm huge on the marketing push for trying to get more people in. I've kind of wondered how far I can go at the store before I get in trouble for it. But yeah, we're constantly talking to people going, "Oh, you're interested in other formats. Oh, you like beer? Come hang out with us." I know we have a friend of Elijah's is supposed to come this weekend, who is just like, "Oh, y'all play Vintage? I don't have to pay for anything. Cool, I'll be there."
Yeah.
And I think this kind of starts to transition into one of the most debated topics in the Vintage community is having a proxy policy. So part of the reason, we've already mentioned this, part of the reason you guys have been able to get this off the ground is that it's 100% proxies. So anyone who wants to show up and play, as long as they have access to like 75 pieces of bulk and a printer and sleeves, can play.
I'm just like seeing how many proxy decks are physically on my desk right now.
Do you have a sense, how many of you guys own Power? I think Patrick and Ben, right?
And yeah, and a couple other
And Nick,
in our,
Nick too,
in our group. So I think there's, I guess, 3 sets around.
That sounds right.
Yeah.
3 sets of Power, 3 sets of Workshops, a set of Bazaars.
That sounds about right.
And I own a LaserJet printer. So that's one thing it's always at the bottom of our tournament announcement post. It's a thing that I tell a lot of people when I'm trying to get them to come is I bring every proxy deck I have. Some of them are out of date, so they're not fully tuned, but you can show up without a deck. Now, it's not a good idea because someone else might show up without a deck, so we might not have enough for everyone. But you can show up with $10 and nothing else, and you can play with us.
Absolutely.
Another thing the proxies do before I'm sure we can or should get into the money discussion, but I think the proxies have allowed for us to have a really great diversity of metagame because it's so many insane play guys talk about this all the time. The paper meta moves slower than the online meta. And that's because, I mean, if I want to buy a new Vintage deck right now, if I decide right now to buy a new Vintage deck, if I'm lucky, I've got it in my hands Monday or Tuesday. And that's not even getting into the money part. So if you want to play a new deck, I mean, it's 9 pieces of paper. I printed out 2 decks for $11 in full color at Kinko's.
Mm-hmm.
So that allows people to switch it up all the time. It allows people, if you really want to win, you can play the best build regardless of whether that's something you're able to get your hands on.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and along those lines, like think cards out any sets, right? We've, someone gets excited about something, they want to try it out. I remember I was like, I want to run Recruiter of the Guard and White Eldrazi and like run a Stoneforge package in the board, and you can do that on a printer on a Saturday morning instead of having to wait to get the cards. And we've even fired a few Vintage proxy, tournaments with having the new set be legal before it was even out for a couple days because people wanted to play test it a little bit. So
also
exactly.
You've also got I don't know if Will has been on the podcast yet, but he has his art on his cards. He's printed everything, so it's using Future Sight borders.
Yeah.
That's not the only thing he's done. Will takes this time to have a little bit of personal expression, and he's printed 2 decks so far. The first one was in the alternate 8th edition border. And if you don't know what I'm talking about, go to Magic Librarities, which has all of these super rare misprints and so forth. And it's what they thought about doing for the border that they rejected and instead went with the 8th edition border. That's the first deck he played, and it's Dredge, all like that, which it's a pretty big time commitment to do something like that. And then his most recent deck is Blue-Red Welder, which is not a deck that's in the format, but he's an EDH player. He wants to do wacky shit, not good shit. And it's 100% in Future Sight borders with some of it is with custom art. Like he's got somewhere he said, I don't like any of the art for this, and he put on art from other games, and like, you know, he's got the real text on there. I'm not really that worried about him not having the real art on there.
Mm-hmm.
But on the subject of trying things out, like you said, we have allowed cards to be legal before they have been before they've been legal. Like, this is the short way. And basically, with the exception of like the last spoilers on Friday and we're playing on Sunday, we almost always, if we have vintage, anything that's known is legal. Right. So like the Sunday after pre-release, everything that's known is legal. We've known it for a few days.
There was some like weird exception that came up with that somewhere around like Amonkhet, wasn't there? Like something, like there was a new set that was legal and something hadn't been banned yet or restricted yet.
I think it was with Harsh Mentor, and did we have Harsh Mentor legal at one time?
It would have been Probe Gush, probably.
Yeah, and
that's what it was. I think we had discussed it and decided that while we can fuck with what cards are, what new cards are legal, fucking with the BNR list is a lot more complicated.
Yeah,
because you got to, especially with new people, you got to go, here's the ban and restrict list. By the way, we're making modifications to it.
Right. And that's something we haven't really touched that yet. I know, you know, other people's will run tournaments with, like, say, will restrict shops or, you know, something like that to try out kind of a different meta. And our meta is, I think, so twisted anyway that we don't really mess with any BNRs.
We just need to unrestrict Chaos Orb. That's about it.
Well, it's not restricted, so.
Oh, all right. Sorry.
Yeah, well, and that's, like I said, the meta being twisted, you can play whatever you want. If there's too much shops, you can show up with every Stony Silence, every Energy Flux effect. You can show up with whatever you want and just crush the meta. And that allows, if you're playing to win, not to just have fun, which I think most of us are playing just to have fun, you can come in and crush if you want to with whatever is going to win that week.
Yeah, let's not talk about that too much since we've had Merfolk win the last two regular tournaments.
But part of the proxy issue, obviously, is also whether or not people have the luxury of owning power. I lived in Boston for a year, and I would go in sometimes to play at Pandemonium Games in Cambridge, which had weekly proxy vintage and non-proxy vintage, and they were able to fire, I guess, doing sanctioned as well. But you know, the question that comes along with that is, even if you're able to fire sanctioned vintage, outside of accruing Planeswalker points, you know, there isn't that much to be gained by only having the sanctioned people there. You're limiting the scope of players available to you.
The primary place where sanctioned vintage matters is at high levels or at places where there are a large number of people. So that's GP side events and Eternal Weekend. Essentially, that's it, really. Because at the side events, it's people will, and I'm sure y'all have all been to GP. Well, y'all have all been to GPs with vintage side events. There will be people who don't play vintage walking around going like, "Wow, I haven't ever seen any of these cards in real life." And having proxies would cheapen that. They're also Wizard sponsored events, so they're not going to have proxies. And then like Eternal Weekend, where, you know, to be called the vintage champs, WotC is not going to let them have proxies.
Yeah, but at the same time, you still have things like the Tales of Adventure. What is their vintage events, right? It's 15
Eternal Extravaganza.
Yeah,
it's 15 proxy. Their events are really, really poorly marketed. I usually don't find out about their events until the week of, and at that point, I'm not paying $1,000 for a last minute plane ticket.
Sure. What is NYSE full sanctioned? Yeah,
I don't remember.
I don't know if they are. Waterbury Open allows proxies.
Waterbury is NYSE.
Oh, okay, I thought they were two different things. Oh, then that, yeah, I think they allow.
In any case, I have a whole rant about how that tournament is stupid. So,
although,
I guess for another time.
Yeah.
Sam's got all the rants. Just got.
I have. Yeah, we could.
He's got the hot takes.
I mean, we can maybe pre-release weekend. We can just have a Sam rant podcast, just 8 hours of Sam yelling and everyone else being like, "Oh, that's interesting."
Or bring back Everyday Eternal and do it on there.
There you go.
So that's kind of the proxy situation. Now, something we haven't touched on is, at some point along the way, you guys decided to buy a blank white playmat.
Sorry, well, hold on. I do want to say one other thing on proxies.
Sure.
I believe that we are at a point economically where if you're going to do proxies, it should be all or nothing. I think 10, 15, 20 proxy. I think the pay extra per proxy. I think that the cards have gotten so expensive that that's not a realistic thing to do. That like, if you want to play a mono, or if you want to play Merfolk in Vintage, you're still going to be spending a few $100s. Like you're still limiting. If you do even 15 or 20 proxy, you're really still limiting yourself to at least legacy and maybe modern players. And by having it be 100%, you just let everyone play.
Yeah, I mean it's a really good point, because what that ends up doing as well is, our events, anyone can show up with anything, and it's not going to be like, oh well, Patrick just has shops, he's only going to play shops. It's I've got a printer, so I can play whatever I want.
It's not just you can play whatever you want for fun or to crush. You can also play whatever you want in terms of not locking the meta into what people have.
Absolutely, and so I think that allows a lot of diversity. And just to go back, just to touch on the financial part, like if we weren't doing proxy or playtest cards, we wouldn't be doing this. Like there's just no way. We wouldn't have enough people to do it, and it wouldn't be a thing.
We very close to when we started Goyfdom, as it were. Nick attempted to start Vintage, and Will said, "Yeah, if you make it happen, we can make it happen." And it was 15 proxy limit. And I don't think he ever got more than 3 or 4 people to show up. And then we did no proxy limit. And the first tournament, we had 12 people.
Yeah.
And it's just because, I mean, what am I going to – am I going to weaken my deck? Am I going to buy a card that I can't play in a sanctioned tournament? It's tough. And also on sanctioning, like if it's unsanctioned, why put a restriction on it? Just let people play. Let the best player win.
Absolutely.
Any other points on proxies, guys?
Oh, our proxy rule. I do not like the Austin proxy rules. The Austin proxy rules they're complicated. You can go Google Eternal Struggle Austin Vintage, and the proxy rules will show up. It's got to be at least a page printed out, and it's a pain in the ass. Our proxy rule right now is don't make us make a proxy rule. So, I mean, like, here's one of my proxies. Those who are listening on audio can't see it. I've got a black and white printout that is probably 80% the size of a Magic card shoved in a sleeve with a Magic card. And you know what? Everyone knows what that is. No one has to look up Oracle text on that. But the first time someone comes in with a bunch of Sharpie on the back of cards, we're going to go, okay, now we have to make a rule. So our rule right now is don't make us make a rule.
Yeah.
What I'll say on the flip side, which is interesting, is the Austin proxy rule, you're absolutely correct, it's very long and seemingly off-putting maybe. The time that I've gone to an Eternal Struggle event here, it wasn't enforced in the slightest. There were people playing proxies basically like what Sam held up, and there were people playing, full sanction decks. So
but there's still a problem in that.
It's not really an excuse, because that can still put off someone who's new to it who might otherwise show up.
I mean, Austin is, I mean, I drove back and forth that like every weekend for an entire summer. That's a 2-hour, 10-minute trip tops for me. I would totally drive to Austin, play Vintage, but I'm not following all these rules. And I read them all and go, I guess I'm not playing Vintage in Austin. And maybe the rules aren't enforced, but I don't want to drive to Austin and go, oh, this is the one time they enforce the rules.
Yeah, that's true. All right. I'm going to grab a beer.
Yeah, I feel like a commercial break. I'm out of rum.
Yeah, I guess I'll do the same.
Damn, I don't have a "we'll be right back." This is so much less professional than the Goyf stream.
I know.
Which we didn't record. More on that later.
Ashby, do you want to play some lounge music for us?
I mean, I can tell the guys in the other room to start cheering louder for football. We can get some entertainment. Yeah.
All right, I acquired rum, but no loose women, unfortunately, were found in my apartment.
Well, you do have a wall of playmats behind you.
Yeah, I'm gonna have to agree with that.
Speaking of playmats, oh wait, Patrick's not back yet.
Yeah, we'll wait. So hopefully, maybe this will be the first time Sam edits one of our casts.
I have edited all of our casts in audio. I have also done it fully automated, which is what I'll do on this one. So people will not hear the silence of us going to get beer, but will hear you bitching about the silence.
Accurate.
Another point on proxies while we don't have Patrick here is I've told a lot of people this, and this is kind of a pain in the ass, but I tell people if you really have a deck you want to play and you really don't want to print it, like I said, I've got a LaserJet printer. I'll print the thing for you, but I'm not bringing you blank cards. I'm not bringing you sleeves. I'm doing the part that requires you to do something Magic players can't do.
Which it shouldn't be that difficult to print something out.
Well,
At least people should. I mean, they should know somebody.
Well, I mean, but it is the one line that not every Magic player is going to have. Not everyone has a printer or can print at work or whatever. And I'll go, hey, yeah, you can do that. I'll bring you scissors. You got to show up early and cut it because I'm not doing that anymore. I have cut my share of proxies up.
Yeah, I thought about actually buying one of those like paper slicer things. Just
I'll tell you, I did it at work.
I actually did.
It's so I hate doing it. I
didn't think it was worth it. Like I did it, and was like, this is not significantly less work, except for the part where I had to do work to acquire the paper cutter.
It was like $9.99 off of Amazon, and
Did you get the one with the razor that moves back and forth?
Yeah, actually, it's right here.
Because like the one at work is the big motherfucking.
No, it's just this little guy.
Yeah,
Right?
yeah,
So
that's
just
what I was thinking of getting.
Slice them up, and it works great. And before the banned and restricted announcements, I think I had like 6 decks that I could just throw in a box or in my bag and bring to the shop or bring to the brash or wherever we're playing and just have them.
That's a project I'm working on that will be revealed in the next week or two, is a way for someone who's looking to organize it to just be like, here's a PDF, it's all the decks, it's primers, it's the whole thing.
Cool. That's awesome. By the way, I have a nice beer upgrade to Brazos Valley Mama Tried, the Citra hopped one.
Mama Tried is great, and Citra hops are wonderful.
That's 2 really good things.
Yeah, I guess I didn't say what beer I'm drinking. I'm drinking Blanche de Brussels.
Oh, nice.
Got a tall boy of it, so.
Not familiar with it. Is it like a Belgian? I'm assuming.
I think so. It's got a little dude peeing. So.
Oh yeah,
That's a famous statue in Brussels that you should absolutely not go out of your way to see. It's like 2 feet tall. It's in a fucking corner of an alleyway. And just Google it, and you'll be like, "That's it. Now I don't have to go see that when I'm in Brussels."
I think it's also widely replicated. But
also, if you go to a bar that has this beer on tap, the tap itself is the statue. So it's a little boy peeing. Is the tap
if you're gonna have a tap that dispenses looking like it's urine, it should really be Bud Light. All right, on with the part of the show that people tuned in to listen to.
Yeah, so
presumptuous.
at some point along the way, you guys bought a plain white playmat. What was that playmat used for?
So I'm speaking very slowly because I'm pulling the image up right now.
So I'll give Sam a second and talk about a little bit where the playmat idea came from. I think Sam was like, okay, we're going to run these tournaments. It's not going to be in the store. What do people want for prizes? And so I think we were kind of throwing around things. Obviously, you can throw in some cards that people are interested in. I think I threw out the idea of a playmat. And as you can see,
there was something before playmat.
I'm sure there was.
Well, historically, because this matters, we thought about a wrestling belt, and I fucking researched it.
The title belt. I guess and
we should have done that. We screwed up. That would have been way better.
But as you see behind Sam, he didn't necessarily want a new playmat, right? He's got a lot of very nice playmats. So he then mentioned the idea of the title belt, and I was like, well, I'm not necessarily going to wear a title belt to work as much as I would like to. So I think out of that stemmed this idea of why not have a blank playmat where we could essentially turn it into our own title belt. And whoever won it got to essentially take it, make it their own, and essentially put in what they've done from the mat and how they won and where it was at. And this is what it's turned into. It's a story about Ben.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and I think this is the thing everyone says. So we pay $10 cash entry. We pay out 80 to 90% cash, depending on how much how much the prize pool needs to be renewed. No one cares about that. Everyone wants the playmat.
Yeah, it's all about the playmat.
But we can talk a little bit more about how cool it is to have that. But back to marketing, because I'm all about this. Is supposed to be community building, and this is the thing I'm huge on with our community, is playing with this at a Grand Prix or FNM or Saturday Legacy is awesome, because everyone wants to know why the fuck do you have a Sharpie covered playmat with random people's names? It's like, let me tell you about how we play Vintage.
And some very awesome artwork by artists that I will give the credit to Ben on this. He actually, since he was often in possession of the mat as it was being going around, he took it to some GPs with him. And we've got Mark Teeden, who did some art for Soul Ring that he got signed at San Antonio. And then you can't beat it. We've got the original Lurgoyf.
And this has spawned another cool thing. Pete gave Ben a hell of a deal on this. I won't say what it was, but he did this very cheaply. He thought it was super cool that we're named after a piece of art. If you don't know, Pete Venners has a whole thing on his website about the history of Lurgoyfs and why they're designed the way they are. And he's got like stories and history and all sorts of anthropology and shit. I guess
it's so cool. The tusks are to get through the permafrost to dig up dead bodies so that they can feed. Like it's pretty awesome.
But I think it's really cool. We didn't ask Venters or Watsy if we could use the image, because the image is based off of the artwork for Lurgoyf. And Pete saw it and tweeted to us, said he wanted a t-shirt. And I don't have, we're out right now, but on our next run, I'm shipping him a t-shirt and a couple other things. And that's just like, it's another one of the things that's really cool about having a team, having a group identity, is that, like, I mean, people walk up to Pete Venners and he's like, "Oh, y'all, you're one of those guys from Texas."
Yeah, it's super cool. And, I think we're getting more and more people coming out to play Vintage and become part of the group, and more t-shirts from that. And it's pretty awesome.
On the team thing, wearing like the t-shirt or the hoodie, when I was playing Grand Prix Trials out in Vegas, every round I had multiple people asking me, "Can you tell me about the Lurgoyf?" Like, they were wanting to know more about our team, and I basically was trying to explain how we were just mainly players who play Legacy and Vintage, and I'm one of the few who plays Modern as well as Standard. And
wait, can I remove you from this?
Yeah, yeah. I think there's a little X right here. I'll just drop myself out. No, but people, when they see it, they wanted to know what it was about. Hearing, I'm not saying we're a professional Magic team. None of us are
No.
winning Grand Prix or even traveling to multiple GPs a year to try to get on the Pro Tour. But people, when they see that kind of thing, they want to know what it's about. And it was really a way for us to, and I know multiple guys at GP Vegas were wearing their Lurgoyf's shirts.
We did an entire run of shirts. We sold like 15 shirts in the week before GP Vegas.
Exactly. And people were wearing them, and I'm sure not just me, but other people also had people coming up to them and just going, "Tell me about the Lone Star Lurgoyfs. Where are you guys out of?" "Oh, I'm from Dallas." "That's really cool. You all have a team in Houston, and you have players outside of Houston too. That's really, really cool." So it's having that has been incredibly key to expanding the brand of the team and showing it off.
It's also, I mean, having t-shirts has a couple benefits. Like, I mean, it's a lot easier to find all your friends when they're all wearing bright blue t-shirts.
Oh, absolutely.
With a giant logo on the front.
Great. It's great.
And then similarly, I know a couple people have tweeted to me that they've just they know me. They know I'm not going to hang out with douchebags. So they walk up to people with Goyf t-shirts and like, "Hey, I'm Joe. Who are you?" Basically.
It's probably also Joe.
It might have actually been Joe. And then we could get into what's good about being a team. We're not a pro team. We do practice together when we've got a big event coming up. But I think one of the big things that, I would highly encourage people to set up something a little more cohesive than we play Magic together is like if, not that this is possible anymore, if I was playing old Miracles with Topper, maybe High Tide, I've got a bunch of guys that like, I'm going to go to time every round. I'm not going to have any time to go get a snack. I got a bunch of guys who, hey, you're playing a fast deck. You mind running to the McDonald's across the street for me? And I think all of us are just like, yeah, no, that's no problem. We're all here to help each other out.
Yep.
Yeah, and I think that's kind of, it's almost how the team itself started is a group of us were traveling and going to GPs together, and it all stemmed out of that. It's like, well, let's make this a little bit more fun. And I think that's what that makes this is a lot more fun. Like you said, none of us are there. We're all trying to win and have fun. It's a competitive game and we're competitive people. But ultimately, I think a lot of us are having a good time and enjoying ourselves and the community around us and, getting to see people play some of the best formats of Magic that are out there. Often have a beer and relax and have a really, really good time. And if it's the t-shirts that can bring that together and make it a little bit more cohesive, allow you to meet new people, have a good conversation with them, like all of those are really positive things towards making this something that's good and keeps growing.
So one thing we've done with the t-shirts that I want to mention is we've done 3 different colors. And in the first 2 colors, you could get your name on your back, which most of us went with nicknames. Most of us went with different nicknames each time. That way, everyone knows you wore a different shirt on day 2.
Yeah, definitely look for us at the next U.S. Legacy GP. We'll be doing a legacy. We'll have a Lord Goyf testing house beforehand, like the Pro Tour players.
I should be at DC, which I believe is in September.
It's a couple weeks. Yeah,
a bunch of us will be at Eternal Weekend in October, and then I will be at GP Atlanta in November with Tusks. I might finally get a Tusk shirt. Now he's going to listen to this and be like, I'm never giving you a fucking Tusk shirt.
I'll probably order you.
I'm pretty sure he's already said that, Sam.
Yeah.
No, he told me if I moved to Atlanta, I could have a Tusk shirt.
That's fair.
And I asked if his company was hiring.
But with the new announcements for next year, though, I think we'll be a lot more of us doing some traveling. We're going to have a lot more Legacy next year, which is going to be fantastic. So.
Well, especially with Seattle. Seattle is a great beer city, a great food city, it's a great place to spend a week, and with Magic on one end of that week. And we also have several of us I know have friends. The founder of our store lives there now. So I imagine we'll have a very, very large turnout to Seattle.
Yeah, I think that'll be excellent.
And any of these team format events will be a nice chance for Ashby to show his value as a standard player on the team.
Yeah, I'm there. That's the only reason I'm on this team. They brought me on was just for the standard.
That's really the problem with the team events is we're all looking around going, does anyone know someone who will play standard with me? It's look, just play a really slow deck. I'll tin fins them out. You don't have to win a single match.
Right. I'm gonna admit something here. Can't you play a fully old bordered burn deck in standard right now?
There's a standard deck that's 60. It's all old border.
Oh,
just play no sideboard. No sideboard.
I'd take one for the team to do that. 15 mountains.
The Pro Tour. I think there's a Pro Tour coming up that they're doing in the next year where it's team constructed, if I remember right. So I guess I need to get myself qualified for a RPTQ so I can figure out I need somebody for Legacy and somebody for Modern.
The RPTQ setup for that is really fucked up. What you want to do is top 8 at GP. That's going to be way easier.
Are you sure?
So getting back to the playmat, the way it was structured was that whoever came in first for that given week of vintage could sign the playmat and do whatever stupid shit they want on it, and everyone has very clever things they wrote. The idea was once the playmat had reached maximum capacity of signatures, you guys would have a championship to determine who gets to own the playmat permanently. That championship happened very recently. It was the Lone Star Lord Goyf Invitational, which was hosted, I believe, at Patrick's house. Is that right?
Is it the Eagle's Nest?
Yes.
Eagle's Nest.
Which is also the name of Hitler's bunker, by the way.
How did you guys choose the people who were invited to that?
I think a lot of it was just based off of our community and the main the staples of it, right? So kind of the people who came around a lot, and then it kind of came down to the people who could make the tournament weekend.
Yeah, I don't want to get too far into it because I don't want anyone to feel left out. But we started with the guys who showed up to every event, the guys who helped found it, which was me, Patrick, because it's at his house, he gets invited. Me, Patrick,
it wasn't
Ben,
necessary.
Me, Patrick, Ben, and Stu. And I said, hey, we want to do this in this 6-week period. When are you available? And we picked, we had to pick a time Patrick was available, but we picked the time that the most of us could show up. And then from there, we said, all right, who else comes out a lot? Who else is a big part of the community outside of playing Magic? So, for example, Ashby came. He's only played Vintage with us 2 or 3 times, but every time we're going out to a bar, he's there. He's come to several Legacy. I know he now has a 0 proxy Vintage deck, and he can't go to Eternal Weekend.
Nope.
Oh.
I don't have a deck, Ashby, so...
Yeah, dude, you are more than welcome to take this with you if you want to win the No Proxy Award. Eternal Weekend.
The Unpowered Award.
The Unpowered Award. That's it. Yeah.
But yeah, we aimed for 8, and we did a full round robin, which gave us 9 rounds. Everyone getting 2 buys where they would do commentary. Unfortunately, through the mistakes of someone who's definitely not me, it was not recorded locally or on Twitch. So for the 9 or 12 of y'all who watched, thanks for watching. You are a part of history because no one else saw it.
I'm pretty glad it's not online. I wanted pretty hard having a chalice on the board and letting Sam basically vampiric tutor, let it resolve, not even thinking about my chalice on one. And
that wasn't the worst one.
And then getting his another basically tutor to search up.
It was I went demonic consultation.
Yeah, exactly.
Ashby grabs the card as if to read it, and then just looks at me and says, I know what this card does, but I know that they should be bringing this up on the stream because no one knows what this fucking card does.
Yeah.
And he sat there,
and then I let it
set
fucking
it down
resolve.
directly on top of his chalice. And after 20, 30 seconds, I'm like, all right, resolves? And he's like, yeah. I'm like, cool. And then I pull out, before I even went to draw from my deck, I pulled out a Post-it note and wrote, Miss Chalice count 2 and set it on the board under the camera.
Yeah, it was a huge punt. And that's when I was just like, man, I'm not forgetting my chalice triggers anymore.
You got to play to your outs, and sometimes your out is your opponent being a ham sandwich.
Yep, basically, yeah.
What did the 3 of you guys play during the Invitational?
You know what? I can actually answer that question even better, and I can tell you what everyone played.
Yeah, let's do it.
First, I just want to commend Ashby for letting me not be the only one whose nickname is Mrs. Chalice Triggers.
Yeah, exactly. I couldn't let you be alone.
Yeah, a compatriot at heart. I appreciate it and commend you. I don't actually think I missed any Chalice Triggers on camera, though I'm not really sure.
Yeah, so Patrick was second to last place.
Yep.
But he did have the most fun.
Absolutely.
And he won drunkest. And his prize for winning drunkest was we allowed him to kill the keg because it was at his house and he paid for it. So the decks were in alphabetical order by name. Arjun was on Blue-Red Delver. That's like the punishing Delver. Ashby was on Powerless Eldrazi, and I believe you were 2 cards short of having no proxies,
yeah,
which people were able to get for you on the day of.
Yeah, exactly. I was short Grafdigger's Cage, which I come to find out since we submitted our deck list early, and
that card does nothing.
So it was great having 3 of those on my board that were.
Our first place winner, Ben Kendrick, played Blue, White, Red Mentor. It was the first time he'd ever played Mentor, which I think really speaks to his skill level that he was, or his sobriety, that he played a deck he'd never played to first place in a round robin tournament.
Don't prop up Ben's ego.
He had one loss the entire time, and I believe it was to Ashby, wasn't it?
No, he beat me game 3 because he blew up my Leyline of Singularity.
All right.
I think at this point Ben is actually Liliana of the Veil. He has a pact with several demons.
Well, the problem is his pact is that he can drink a lot more than we can.
Yeah.
And he has protection from peer pressure.
He does.
Joe Kington played Paradoxical Storm. He punted a lot because he had never played the deck, but he also had a lot of fun.
Yes,
Patrick, you played a wacky stacks deck that had 61 cards in it and
I did.
thoroughly fucked up my ability to display decks on the stream.
My alternate purpose is just to be a little bit annoying and make things a little bit more interesting.
We had this whole discussion the week of how I love to sideboard to 61 cards in control decks. And you were like, Stacks is a control deck?
No, but the Stacks build was it was fantastic. It was a combination of some stuff I'd seen Rich Shea playing in some legacy decks, trying out some of the new utility lands. And then some fun stuff, some tabernacles, some bazaars.
I would describe this as Uba Stacks with no Uba mask in it.
Yeah, it's Ubalist Stacks.
What were your win cons in there?
Lodestone?
Lodestone, Revokers.
Lodestone, Revokers, hold on. We've got a Bottled Cloister in here, one Bazaar, one Buried Ruin, one Grasping Dunes, which everyone had to read.
Yeah, that was great. I also messed that up on stream, and because it's at sorcery speed, and I didn't realize that.
Yeah, that makes it really terrible.
Yeah, I was like, oh, I like this a lot left right now.
Then me, I played 2-card Monty. I actually, more marketing. You should go on the Mana Drain and read the 1,500-word primer I just wrote on 2-card Monty, because it's all about the deck that I just played.
And then have a beer and read Ben Perry's addendum to that.
I would wait until he posts his second addendum, which is currently in progress, because then you'll have like a solid 6,000 words of Ben Perry in one sitting.
And that's never a bad time.
Tim Everett played Merfolk. I believe he played like 4 proxies in his whole deck, and he also had some cool tech, I believe. And then our runner-up was Will Meershin, who played what we called Is It Welder? ? It's a blue-red welder deck, and I called it that because is it? It's a stupid joke. But also, we don't see welder control ever, and there's no slaver in here either. And this is a point that I wanted to make sure I got on. We kind of split the field with 8 people. Essentially 4 old guard, 4 new guard. 4 guys who've been playing Vintage for a long time, 4 guys who've been in the group since the beginning, and 4 guys who have joined later who aren't as familiar with Vintage. I mean, Ashby is a great example of this. Like I said, I think you've come out 3 times plus the Invitational. And we had 4 and 4. And on our commentary, we always had 1 old guard, 1 new guard. That way, new guard could ask questions. It was made for a really great give and take. But I was really excited that Will is kind of one of the new guard guys that in the final, we had new guard versus old guard, which I think really speaks to the fact that, especially in a Vintage format where you can play whatever you want, you don't have to be this top-level expert. You don't have to have this super deep understanding of the metagame. You can just go out there and be a good Magic player and win.
Absolutely. I think it speaks a lot to even just the deck building and the creativity that was put forward with it. I think was fantastic. Like Arjun's blue-red Delver build was awesome, and
yeah, that deck was ridiculous.
In a normal meta, it might have struggled a little bit, but it was fantastic. Like really cool stuff.
It was probably the only meta call.
Yeah, and a very good one at that. And props to Tim as well, who's been playing for a long time, but he's been doing extremely well with this Merfolk deck. He's won the last 2 just regular opens that we run, and did decently well at the Invitational as well.
And I believe he was at least in the top half of the Invitational. By the way, all of these deck lists are both on the Mana Drain and our website, LoneStarLordGoyfs.com.
Do you guys think there's any repercussions for the broader broader Vintage community when you see someone like Tim win 2 times in a row on Merfolk? Does that say anything about the sort of echo chamber conversation about how Mentor and shops are dominating, or do you think that more has to do with just it's good in your meta?
Well, like we've said, our meta is not really a thing that exists because you can change so frequently. So I think it's a mix of the 2 things. He's good at Merfolk. Merfolk is a good deck. And then you have, I mean, there's something to be said too for the fact that a lot of us are hopping around decks. But I think there is a little bit of the echo chamber effect. I mean, yes, Mentor won our event. Yes, Shops wins a lot of our events. But when you show up to these events where you can play anything, and this is a thing that's going to be really interesting at Eternal Weekend, is this will be the first 9-round vintage tournament in the Western Hemisphere since the last Eternal Weekend. Is that these guys are going to have to go up against, like, these guys playing Shops and Mentor. They're going to have to play a Merfolk. They're going to have to play a Dredge.
What do you think? Speaking of Eternal Weekend, sadly, since I can't go, I'm now even more interested about knowing more about it. What is the meta going to be? If you had to say the top 3 decks, what would you go with?
I would go with, there's a BNR announcement that is very highly looked forward to very soon that will radically change my answer to this question.
So okay. I know that's time for another time that we can go through a rant of banning and restriction.
At least right now, you need to be ready for Mentor, you need to be ready for Workshops, and you need to be ready for Dredge, because you always need to be ready for Dredge. And that's why you should play Seek Armani. That
was going to be my exact answer to that, was it's probably Mentor and Shops, and then being a sanctioned tournament, there's probably going to be a good amount of Dredge as well. So those are the 3.
On the subject of sanctioning, Eldrazi, colorless Eldrazi, I believe, is actually the cheapest deck that is tier 1 in the format.
Although that Moon Stompy deck is like making a little bit of waves, but so getting back to the Invitational, Ben wound up taking it down. He is now the proud owner of the playmat, which is probably fitting because he, in the past, won it the most amount of times, and he put money into getting those 2 artists to draw all over it. Moving forward, what are you guys going to do from here? Have you started a Season 2 playmat?
We have started a Season 2 playmat. I requested Tim get me a picture, and he fucking didn't.
Yeah.
But I know that the top row is 2 blue mana symbols, and it says, "It's not mana drain," in quotes, and then it says Ben Kendrick. And then the one right below it, because he won 2 weeks in a row, is the obverse. So it's white blue mana symbols on a black background, and it says, "It's still not mana drain." But we have started that where we've talked about the Season 2 Invitational. It is a lot of work. I know I put probably 40 hours into setting up the stream and doing logistics. Patrick had to clean up after it and stuff. He had to do physical labor. He couldn't sit here in his underpants and watch Netflix and work.
No, I could not. But luckily, Rose was gracious enough to let this happen in her home, and it was great. I really enjoyed it. It was fun having everyone here and having the kegerator and stuff. It's primo. So happy to do it again.
Getting something like this, an all-day get-together with your friends, even if it's not some team thing, it's not a season ender, is something I would really recommend. I think all of us had a lot of fun. Would everyone who went, did y'all have fun?
Absolutely. Yeah.
And I'm very bummed I couldn't have made it. I was back in Connecticut for a family thing, but my hope is Season 2 I'll be able to make it out there.
Definitely. We'll make
you'll definitely be on the first tier for the invites. But just to give an idea, the kind of thing that you can do for something like this is I've been wanting to host a tournament like this since long before we had this kind of group. And I looked into it, and we live about an hour away from an okay beach. It's not great, but it is an hour away.
Is that Galveston?
Yeah, Galveston. And I found a place, beachfront, and it was for $250 a person. We could have 8 people come out. All their food and booze would be covered Friday through Sunday afternoon. And it was everyone who had a significant other was going to get a bedroom. And we would the dudes would just play Magic the whole time. The girls could go out to the beach or go into town or whatever. And it was the thing I tried hard to get going. We could just never get a weekend going. But an all-day Magic event like this, where it's just hanging out with your friends, playing the game you're really into, set it up, man. Like I said, just make it happen. Don't ask permission. Just do it. Be the change. I feel weird quoting Gandhi in reference to Magic, but the thing I tell everyone is just, you want vintage, be the change, make vintage happen. Don't say, "Hey, game store owner, I would like it if you hosted vintage." Say, "Hey, game store owner, you need to host vintage. I will be here on Sunday. Host vintage on Sunday." And most game store owners are going to go, "You're going to acquire the community for me? All I have to do is take the $10? Sure thing, dude."
And Watsy, if you happen to be listening to this podcast or watching for some unknown reason,
well, we have 0 viewers right now.
Well, it's listening. let's get a GP Miami Beach or GP Outer Banks or something like that so we can make this happen. Because I definitely want to do a beach house / GP all in one. If that's possible.
Vegas was probably a step in that direction anyway, right?
I would think so. Yeah.
If you have not
great.
listened to the heavy meta episodes post every GP Vegas, they've gotten a house, and every GP Vegas, I believe one of them has been banned from Airbnb. But their post Vegas stories are fucking fantastic. Spoiler for one of them, they were going to be featured on the WotC stream until Helene woke up on the floor of the house to a text that was like, "Where the fuck are you? The tournament's about to start." So go listen to those. They're fucking great.
So on this note, when's the next time you guys are doing vintage in Houston?
This Sunday.
All right.
And we're going back to Brash. We had to take a slight break from Brash because it is Houston and it gets very hot, and Brash is in a warehouse and doesn't have air conditioning. So we went to a nice establishment down in Midtown Montrose area called Rudyard's Pub. They were gracious to have us and ran vintage there 3 or 4 times.
I think we only actually fired twice because of the whole, like I said, with summer availability was difficult. But we did have people there all 4 times that we were scheduled to.
Yeah.
But with the football season starting, a bar is a little less keen to have us on a Saturday or Sunday. So,
and we're all happy to go back to Brash and sweat it out a little bit. So,
and all the details of this, as I said, they're on the manager and they're on LoneStarLordGoyfs.com. Brash 1 p.m. Beers are $6. Entries $10 cash. Bring whatever you want, as long as it's legal.
Oh, and we usually order pizza.
God, that's gonna be fucking killer for me this weekend. You know.
I know.
Yeah,
because as the HGIC, the head goyf in charge, I will be doing the pizza order, but I cannot eat pizza this weekend.
I'm gonna get you a hat for that.
Yeah.
Do you 3 know what you're gonna play this Sunday?
Oh, I got spice.
I am going.
Actually, right. I'm gonna tell you guys because
no one else in our group chat is gonna listen to this shit.
Absolutely.
Yeah, exactly.
So I'll tell you guys what I'm gonna play.
Yeah.
I really want to try this new shops deck with Dark Depths.
Oh no.
Deck looks sweet. I was thinking about it, but I was also thinking I don't want to use scissors this week.
Yeah, I think I have everything except for the Mirage, whatever.
Mirage Mirror,
whatever the new card is. So
that sounds like garbage.
It does, actually. I'm not really sure what you want to do with it, but I guess I'll find out or not.
I think I'm gonna step into 2-card Monty.
Oh,
I got a convert.
Yeah, so I think I wanna step into that. It's been Merfolk and Eldrazi, so I think I'm gonna do 2-card Monty. I'm gonna look over it. I don't know any other combos I could possibly add, but I might see what I could do with it.
Check out, I really like, Sean commented on my primer, I really like his version of the deck, which he calls Deuces Wild. It essentially removes some of the combo aspect to make it much more consistent. Deck looks really cool. He also claims, and this is probably true, that it's the most expensive viable deck.
And if you've been playing something like Eldrazi or Merfolk for a while, it can be good to switch into something very heavily combo-y. Like
absolutely,
it's like comboing is one of the kind of joys of vintage. So
yeah, I tell most people, if you don't know what you want to do in vintage, I would go for a combo. If you whiffing on tendrils but generating storm count of 35 still feels great.
Right. I mean, there's a lot of really fun things you can do in vintage, and why not? I mean, like every once in a while, it's fun to do. You know, I love to play things like shops and you know, kind of prison decks, but every once in a while, it is fun to just see a turn 1 or turn 2 Grizzlebrand or something like that. It's a lot of fun.
So I will likely be playing the 4-color control deck that I played the last time that we fired at Rudd's. Yeah. It is the first time I have had people concede with no win condition on board. It's like, no, game's too locked out. Fuck all of this. It is also, I think, the saltiest I've ever seen Patrick.
Yeah. I was just having a bad day.
Because it was like, I resolved a Consecrated Sphinx, and you had some way where Consecrated Sphinx couldn't attack, but it was like, oh, in your draw step, I'm going to draw 2. So I'm going to recall every turn. I'm going to mana drain everything you do. And it's going to take me for fucking ever to kill you. But I'm just not going to let you do anything. And Patrick, it had to be turn 25 when you're just like, fuck this.
Yeah, I'm gonna go eat my burger, which is very cold.
Which has gotten cold because you've been mana draining me for the last 30 minutes.
It's all good.
Yeah, that deck list was sweet though. I like that a lot.
That was someone off the drain, right?
I think
yeah,
so.
I talked back and forth with the guy, and he was like, I was like, I think you should make these changes. He was like, I think I should make these changes, and we kind of came to a consensus, and that's what I built.
No, it was solid. I mean, it was like almost like 4-color Planeswalker control in some ways.
Yeah, fucking plays Obnixilis Unleashed or some shit.
That is pretty sweet.
Obnixilis, the next generation.
Yeah, so if I don't play this this Shop's Depths deck, the other one I'm interested in is maybe the Gifts Ungiven deck that hello.
Hey.
That Rich Shea's been playing, which seems really, really cool. Runs a Baral, which is
Master of Compliance.
Yes, yeah. So every blue spell, or no, every blue spell. In Vintage, every blue spell costs one less.
Instants and sorceries.
Sorcery costs one less. So. Yeah, it's pretty sweet. I might try that. I also want to run that in Legacy Bomberman. That seems dumb.
Yeah, I'm gonna be up there for Vintage at the end of the month, and there's a sweet list someone posted on the Mana Drain for an updated version of the deck, which I would very much like to play. That said,
we should let's talk about that in group chat because I have a lot of opinions about that.
But I've been playing Shops for a while, and I'm currently working on buying into powered White Eldrazi. So I think I'm gonna have that deck done soon. So I was thinking of just playing Shops the next time I'm done. I'm up there is like sort of the last time I get to play that deck.
Sure.
So we'll see. We'll see. I got a couple weeks to think about it.
I really like White Eldrazi though. I think that's a great thing to work towards.
I think it'll be fun. Yeah, and it's like in the wheelhouse of decks that I'm used to. So
for sure.
You're also monetarily not far from pretty much anything else because as a Legacy player, I assume you already have duels and fetches.
Yeah, although it's funny, I sold off all my blue duels about a year ago, so I'm like kind of hugely limited in that sense. So.
You don't even have a good excuse.
No.
I have a good excuse for selling all my power.
So it seems like the Houston scene is in good shape. I'm hoping that Austin could get something going like that. As Sam likes to say, a lot of it is about being proactive and just making it happen and seeing who shows up. So I think the onus is on people like me who want to just make it happen. But,
yeah, and I think
sorry, go ahead, Patrick.
Well, I mean, I think we're all excited about coming up to and trying to fire one of the Lurgoyf events in Austin and make a weekend out of it, and maybe we can get a little momentum going with that. So that'd be pretty sweet.
Absolutely, I think the guys here would be pretty pumped to see you guys up. So
I was gonna say we're gonna definitely be publicizing the Austin event very heavily because you've got the city of Austin, you've got a major university there, so you've got a fair amount of Magic players in town already. You've got San Antonio just down the road. Houston is, like I said, if you drive it a lot and you know where all the cops are, it's like two hours. So it will not be hard. I mean, I would imagine that Stu and Houstonians will make 8. So if you're interested in coming to that, I can virtually guarantee you that it's going to fire. People in Houston love going to Austin, even if they talk about how Austin people are terrible. Those people are the people who say that are stupid. They're the same people who say that there's nothing worth doing in Dallas, which is just wrong. But we'll be publicizing that heavily. I'm sure we'll be doing everything we can, extra seats in cars or whatever, trying to make that happen. So watch out for that. Also, if you're in Houston, Brash this Sunday.
Absolutely. And if you're in Austin at the end of the month, Eternal Struggle will be somewhere. I think probably Wonko's Toys and Games, but I don't know if the venue's been announced yet. But in short, Vintage is alive and well in Texas. And if you're listening from outside Texas, you could probably take similar measures to those discussed here and get a community going if it's something that you're passionate about.
Yeah, I will say on a closing note, my as I said, my central thesis is be the change. And one thing I've noticed a couple times, people in our group chat have been like, Sam, it really seems like you think you're in charge. And I'm just like, you want to run this shit? And usually people are like, no, you can be in charge. So if don't take people, kind of being like, it seems like you're trying to really run this. Don't take that as a speed bump. Take it as a compliment, really, that they see, oh, you're willing to put in the effort. I mean, it's really not that much work. The work that I have to do is running the tournament, which I'm going to be there anyway, so that's just showing up 20 minutes early, and typing out deck lists for 45 minutes while I watch Netflix. It's not that hard. You can get it going at your shop, at your brewery, whatever.
And I'll vouch for that. I've ran the event a couple times when Sam hasn't been around, and it is extremely easy. And that being said, though, you can also go to extreme lengths that Sam went to make the invitational awesome in terms of our stream on Twitch, and the bios and just having a great display and everything. So maybe we can find a way to incorporate a little bit more streaming as we go forward with this. It'd be kind of fun.
Yeah, I think that it seems like to get this community up and going, it's not necessarily that much work, but the enthusiasm tends to be contagious, and you'll get people really pumped about doing it if you kind of put in some front end work.
One thing I would say, if you're trying to get it going, find some people who are semi-interested. They don't want to play Vintage a lot, but if you can get 8 people to show up for the first tournament, that's going to be huge. So if you can say, hey, I've got 4 people into Vintage and 4 people who are willing to show up, and you go to a game store and you say, hey, man, this dead space you've got, I can guarantee you 8 people, which is one of the things we've been talking about. There's a store that's going to open in the next year or so, as we've been talking about going there. And I'm going to call them the moment that their manager posts a phone number or an email and say, I can guarantee you 8+ people every other weekend. And that's a thing that's going to, if you're not going to be hosting it at a bar or at someone's house, a thing that's going to really help you is if you can first time definitely get 8 people. And the Vintage community, a lot of us really push for the Vintage community. You'll get people, if you ask, you'll get people to go in from out of town. I mean, Stu, if you were really trying to run an event besides the one that we're all coming up for, and you're like, dude, I'm not sure I'm going to make 8. I think I'm going to be like 6 or 7. I'd be like, all right, I guess I'll mega bus up there.
Which is, that's such a touching thought.
We make it happen just for you.
I will sleep naked on your couch, Stu.
It doesn't have to be naked.
Sometimes you get more than you ask for.
Well, yeah, I think we've pretty well covered it. Does anyone have anything else they want to go over tonight?
I'm good.
I'm good.
I was going to ask, Stu, do you have any, since you haven't been as in with us, do you have any questions that either haven't been answered for you in general, or that maybe you only know the answer to because they've been in chat? They've been in our group.
No. I think we've pretty well covered it. And, the main takeaway, I think, to go back to one of Ashby's earlier points, is that showing up for an event like this, it really is very opening and welcome, and everyone's excited to see a new face. So if it's something that you have even a little bit of interest in trying out Vintage, go give it a try in Houston. It's a good crowd, and you're going to have a good Sunday afternoon.
Yeah.
All right, guys.
Anyone else have closing words?
No, that was beautiful.
Well, it was good catching up with you guys. I'll be seeing you all in a few weeks here, but hope it goes well this Sunday. And
be the change, hail Satan.